War is the father of all and the king of all. It proves some people gods and some people men. It makes some people slaves and some people free, said Heraclitus. What Heraclitus meant when talking about war related to conflict in general is the idea which we find in what is now very much proven true Marxist dogma about the unity and struggle of opposites. It is this struggle that often results in a real war, and it is from real war that a new reality is born. Never this assertion has been more true than in the current moment in history, which sees the new wall emerging. The movement of some armored brigade of Russian ground forces at the line of contact with the Ukrainian forces, or the launch of hypersonic Kinsal or Zircon missiles at Western-made air defense complexes, or the line of shiny new Su-35C fighter planes at the plant in Komsomolsk on Amur, have orders of magnitude more bearing on the global events than all speeches and public performances by Western leaders combined or of statistical data of the EU economy. This passage belongs to the book by Andrei Martyanov, who is today with us, um, America's Final War, that Lola Books has just published in Spanish and German languages with a prologue by Juan Antonio Aguilar. And today, Mr. Martyanov has honored us with his presence, and we are going to make him an interview about the book that everybody now can find in German and in the Spanish languages. You can see the covers right behind me. So, Andrei, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It is my pleasure, really.
The first question that I would like to ask you is about a concept that we find throughout your book and is very relevant in your description of the West. That concept is the echo chamber. Could you please explain us why do the Western elites live in an echo chamber?
Because otherwise, they would be able to survive. We look at the precipitous decline of the intellectual level of combined West. I'm really sad to say that, really. But it's a long story. It was a long road. It started with probably in earnest after 60s, and part of it was obviously the counterculture, which degenerated into not just counterculture, it degenerated into destruction culture, and essentially the removal of any kind of the rational thinking, which I attribute to the actually death of the combined West, the end of its dominance for the last 500 years. So what we have here, we have people who are really well kindergarten level, let's put it this way, maturity level of teenagers at best. They cannot handle bad news. They cannot handle the truth about themselves and about the world outside, which they don't know. So what is the first essentially psychiatric, not even psychological reaction? It is obviously, what, surround yourself in all kinds of the alternative thinking, alternative universe, if you wish. And as the result, they begin to repeat all those, what tropes about the world, which they never knew to start with. And here we have those so-called intellectual class, which supposedly should determine how the society thinks. Here they are. They cannot handle the truth, like in this famous movie, The Few Good Men, when they just can't. This is the defensive reaction. Plus, they people, as we already saw ourselves, a very low moral level, to put it this way, of this intellectual elite and political elite. They prefer to, how to say it, tickle their fancy, if you wish, about how great they are, how incredible they are, how important they are. And because of that, we have the situation that, yes, it becomes that echo chamber, which repeats everything, and it bounces of the walls of this echo chamber, and everybody seemed happy for a while until it gets into a situation like we observe now for the last 3 years, and then suddenly the whole chamber begins to crumble.
Yes, another very important aspect of your analysis is the economic perspective of war. Many in the West considered before the special military operation that due to its relatively small GDP, Russia would collapse and couldn't afford to fight a sustainable conflict in Ukraine. Yet it is the other way around. Russia seems to be the only economy of the conflict being able to sustain the economic efforts of the special military operation, while the Western economies are falling apart. How do you explain this fact?
Same echo chamber, the economic, as my good friend Michael Hudson, one of the most outstanding economists of this generation, actually correctly states, what they teach, what passes for economics in the Western universities is garbage. They teach them what a stock market is and how to squeeze money by means of the Ponzi schemes and things of this nature. This it's complete financialization of the economy, and as a result, even GDP is a fictitious thing, which doesn't reflect at all. I mean, the economic reality. Just to give you an example, Russia produces more steel and iron combined than the United States, just to give you an example. Oh, okay, so there you go. She produces about 3/4 of the energy that United States produces, and United States has more than 2 times larger uh, population than Russia. So it's all bunk. All those economic indices are just garbage, basically. The invention of all those people from the Wall Street to cover up the situation with the real economy. And real economy has everything to do with tangibles. I can calculate, I can count how many units of this or that I can produce, as special military operation demonstrated. Europe can barely produce 40 tanks a year, combined Europe. United States doesn't produce them at all. Russian small economy, as some moron from the Harvard, any other Ivy League economic departments will think, well, Russians produce 1,300 a year. So they go. I mean, how else you can explain it to them? But this is all part of the echo chamber. But reality, of course, is that Europe, especially, well, let me put it this way. Now they begin to admit it. For example, a Russian economy is actually, realistically, larger than Germany and French economies combined. But yeah, sure, let them think whatever they want.
Yes, actually, in your book, you give a lot of context and a lot of data that proves what you're saying, which is uh, very much, uh, very much true. But let's talk about the technological aspect of the conflict. In your book, you analyze in depth all the technological aspects of the SMO, especially the combat aviation and the missiles. And you conclude that for the first time in history, Russia has a more developed industry than the West. How and why did this change happen?
Oh, this change was happening very much already in the Soviet times. And I actually, in the first chapter, I describe it. United States always had the lead at that stage, let's say in 70s and 80s, in electronics and obviously computational capabilities in computers, which is totally natural for the United States at that time. But eventually, if you look across the board, it started to fall behind pretty much in every single aspect of the military industrial capability, apart from the I mean, quantitative aspect of it. So if you take a look at, let's say, combat aviation, yeah, F-35, we know what it is. It's a flying catastrophe. So Russians flying are actually flying real fifth generation fighters, and they are which are Su-57s. Combat capability of Su-35s, they are just untouchable because and this is, for example, combat aviation, which faced the other combat aviation, which wanted to shoot it down, and it's already completely suppressed. That Russians wiped off the skies of Ukraine more than 650 planes, combat airplanes. So, and you go across that, and then you get into the missilery. United States is not even in the same universe in terms of the long-range fires. Every single long-range fire, from their even artillery to obviously missiles like Tomahawk, PLAM, Tomahawk land attack missiles, they are not even in the same, they are outranged and outgunned and out everything. And then there is the issue, obviously, of the anti-shipping missiles and hypersonic technology. United States doesn't even register there. And this is how it happened over the long period of time. It didn't happen at once, but it happened as the result of this echo chamber. For some reason, they beat the, excrement from the backward, utterly incompetent, Saddam's army, and they decided that for some reason, it's something like a standard of. It's not a standard. It was the ideal conditions for the coalition for half a year, bombing them into utter submission and them just basically killing that so-called army. And as a result, they convinced themselves that they are so great, which they never were. And here's the result.
Mm-hmm. So what you point and you identify systemic and structural factors that differentiate Russia and the West when it comes to education, for example, or ways of life. What are those main systemic and cultural factors that distinguish the Russian model from the Western model?
Well, I'll give you an example just in terms of education first. For all flaws, make no mistake, I do not try to present Russia as some kind of the utterly perfect. No. Russia has its own blemishes. Russia has her own problems. There are some other issues which she needs to address. But if we go to education, let's start with Admiral Rickover in the 1970s. He stated a very profound thing, actually, the father of the American nuclear navy, And he stated our main, the national threat for the United States is not, well, actually he stated it in the 1950s, and speaking to the position towards the subcommittee of the Congress on the armed services. And he stated our clear and present danger is not nuclear weapons, it's the public schools of Soviet Union. Because essentially what many people do not understand, even the kids from most schools, not all, there are some schools which suck in Russia, make no mistake, but others which are excellent, so it's there are some entrance exams to let's say any kind of the serious universities or even military academies. When you look attentively at the educational level, these are the things on physics, for example, and mathematics, which are taught in the sophomore years in such places like MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So as the result, just to give you an example, America doesn't prepare air defense officers. No, I mean, they do have people who know how to push buttons. But you go to Russia and you have Yaroslavl Air Defense Academy, 5 years, 6 days a week, which amounts to 6 years. This is the academic level untouchable by, for example, any U.S. service academy. So you have those people, for example, you can graduate from, let's say, U.S. Military Academy at West Point with majoring in literature. How the hell? How? Can you explain to me? I mean, degree in literature from military academy. So, and that's the difference. You have the officer corps, which is an order of magnitude more prepared and trained. And as Russians laugh, and there is a meme now, it's not meme, it's a joke, and say that NATO wanted to attack the country, which represents out of itself one huge military academy with the huge military industrial plant attached to it. This is exactly what happened. So we are talking about the military cultures which are so on the different levels that it's difficult to explain. And as the result, they do not even understand in NATO what was going on at the battlefield, how the strategies were developed, and as the result, yeah, it's economics, it's education, it's culture, and well, what do you expect? They ran into this brick wall of the reality, and well, too bad. It's their problem now.
And the Bologna reform in Europe was also a disaster, and Russia stayed out of it, which was very beneficial, right?
Yeah.
For the country. In my opinion, one of the most brilliant paragraphs of your book reads: "The problem within the West itself is laid bare by its military and economic impotence in trying to defeat the Russian SMO. Russia has not only defied the West's shock and awe level sanctions assault economically, but is defeating it militarily and in sprouting what the combined West was always afraid of, granted in different ways and with different intensity throughout the decades of the Cold War 1.0, namely developing an idea that humanity can hold on to, a moral idea. This is the West kryptonite, the one it cannot deal with due to a complete absence of appropriate elites and governing mechanisms which could avert the catastrophe for the West and its loss of dominant position of the last half millennium." This is certainly a very powerful statement. A moral idea that humanity can hold on to, which is like kryptonite for the West. Those words resonate very strongly. Could you please briefly outline what that moral idea is?
It's economic and moral. It's a classic conservative. A conservative in the sense that, yeah, you live within tradition of the code of morality which humanity lived with more than just since the times of Christ, but even before, with the social consciousness which was already permeating the views on the ancient Greeks, and Romans, and so it's what made Christians, I mean, Western civilization, what it was. What we have right now, it is post-Christian. It is absolutely degenerate in terms of culture. And here you have the contrast with Russia, which comes out. It says, no, 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 no. We need to be conservative in this respect. We need to live by the principles which are enshrined in the, Christian morality, essentially, Although, of course, that morality was emergent before that. And so this is a critical thing which many people recognize. And it's around the world, and they say, oh my God, yeah, they say, hold on to your tradition, develop it, progress, but don't kill it. We saw the opening of the Olympic Games in Paris. It was Satanism, simple as that. Combined West is the post-Christian, that which automatically makes it not West anymore. So, and if we remember the Roger Scruton's definition of what combined West is, and that's the idea. And the economic part of it is very simple. You want to survive as a state, you want to survive as the nation, you better do something similar to what China is doing, but Russia. Their state ownership and control of the critical strategic resources, while leaving their free enterprise for all kinds of things which are, retail, the production of the consumer goods, things of this nature. Absolutely. Farming, absolutely. Go right ahead, do it. So this is what is, if you wish, it sounds horrible for some people, but this is the proper socialism which was supposed to develop. So, and this is like many people do not understand that Russia controls, has her strategic resource, and strategic enterprises are nationalized. And actually, they operate on a much more effective level than when they were privatized. Well, privatization essentially is just squeezing the profits only, So And this is the new economic model which also emerges. And then there is I mean, it's kind of the post factum thing about this reserve currency, and that you are for some reason sit on the reserve currency, and they think that this advantage. Not anymore. And so these are the ideas, and suddenly people go out and they say, oh my god, Chinese yuan means a lot. Russian ruble, it's our, it's our currency. We want it. We don't want any kind of the universal, things like a dollar or euros. This is our thing. And nobody's gonna give up this, their currencies, what they used to have in their countries. I remember about 15 years ago, Germans had this. Very feeble sentiment about, oh, how about we get back our Deutsche Mark, Well, forget about it. You're not in the proper geographic locality to do this. But this is this essentially ideas. Essentially, these are the natural law ideas. Live like normal human, develop like the normal human. Family, it's a man and a woman. Children, defend children, bring them up, make them grow into proper, decent people. Things of this nature, And suddenly, yes, economically speaking, guess who is now becoming the main hero of Russian culture? Blue collar men, people who work on those, industrial plants, develop their resources, and suddenly it's just back into Russian culture as it was during Soviet Union. Say, yeah, that's the guys who actually make the world go around. So, and that's the idea.
The workers, and
Yeah,
everyday, people who support the country with the everyday
exactly.
work,
Yeah,
which from the Western perspective is incredible, because in Spain and in Germany and in the European Union in general, we have even lost our economic sovereignty and our monetary sovereignty.
yeah,
We just have given up the most important piece of our sovereignty, which is our own currency, which is
yeah,
and
absolutely.
it has created extremely difficult problems to solve, which are not solvable without monetary sovereignty. I think that the model that Russia proposes is therefore so powerful. And well, in my opinion, as a Spanish guy, I always say that Spain should be the second S of BRICS,
Yeah.
with Spain. That would be my dream, but let's see. But as a final question, I would like to ask you, how do you think that the Spanish and German speaking audiences should approach your book, and why do you think that this book is relevant for the Spanish and German speaking readers?
Well, it's relevant. First, we have to keep in mind that these are two. Well, Spanish is a hugely significant language in the world, so it's important to reach to obviously a large Spanish-speaking audience. And Germans obviously are dominant very much in Europe, so it's just both worrying and actually explaining to people what they are facing. That's the only purpose of those books. It's to understand how European Union and present political elite of the West betrayed people of Europe, and if it will change the mind of even few people, that I would consider to be a success. Because the Europe as we used to know, especially in terms of political elite, is not there anymore. But people of Europe are voting for that, and for some, that's the time of reckoning. And if this book helps them to understand their predicament, that will be important. That's the whole purpose of it.
Well, we really hope so, and we hope not only some people, but a lot of people. I really think that the tide is changing, and for us, like I say, it's a huge honor to present the book in Spanish and in German. In Spanish, it's called La Guerra Final de los Estados Unidos. In German, it's called Amerikas letzter Krieg, and Lola Books has published both of them just recently. And we hope to like Mr. Martyanov says, change a little bit, or at least help the European people to get closer to Russia and to be friends with Russia. That has we should be thankful for liberating us from Nazism and helping or trying to avoid Francoism in Spain, which is also a very heroic act by the Soviet Union that the Spanish people certainly we don't forget, and we are very thankful. So we hope that with this translation in German and in Spanish, people get a better understanding of what's going on. I think it's a wonderful book, and I thank you very very much for this interview. I hope
My
that
pleasure.
I hope that is not the last book that we publish in Lola Books written by you.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.